Hello class, we're about to start section 8.5 part 1, solving rational equations. It says how to solve a rational equation. When the equation contains algebraic fractions, the easiest way to solve it is by clearing fractions, which means multiply by the LCD, or the least common denominator. That is for the whole problem. So, note, you must check that the solutions are in the domain of the original expression. Okay, we will get to that. But first of all, let's take a look here. Our denominators, we had 3, x minus 5, and we know this 2 is assumed to be over 1. So we don't have to concern ourselves with the 1. But the LCD of 3 and x minus 5, the LCD would be 3 times the parenthesis x minus 5. So we will multiply this whole equation by 3 times x minus 5. Now, we know that these two 3's will simplify each other out, and we will have x minus 5 times 2, which will leave us 2x minus 10. That would take care of this first side of the equation. Now we go here. These x minus 5's would simplify out, and we would be left with 3 times 7, which is 21. And finally, we would take 3 times x minus 5 times 2. Now, if we multiply 2 times 3, we know that gives us 6. So we could take 6 times x, which is 6x, and then 6 times a negative 5 will give us a minus 30. So now if you notice, we don't have any more denominators here. So we just have a straight equation. So now we need to get all the x's on one side. So first, let's combine these like terms. 21 minus 30 we know is negative 9 plus 6x. Now, we can subtract 6x on both sides. And we will have negative 4x minus 10 is equal to negative 9. Now, we will add 10 on both sides, and we will have negative 4x is equal to 1. Now, we will divide each side by negative 4, and x is equal to a negative 1/4. And that is our final answer. Now, what we need to do before we leave this as our final answer, we have to ask ourselves, would this negative 1/4 make any one of these denominators 0? It does not. So what we would do is this here. We could set this denominator equal to 0, and this will let us know that our final answer could not be a positive 5. And our final answer is not a positive 5, so we don't have to worry about this. So our final answer to this problem is x is equal to a negative 1/4. Now let's go here to b. Now we look here. Now first of all, I would suggest that we take this x squared minus 5x and factor this. So we have 1 plus 4 over x minus 5 is equal to 2 over, we can factor out an x, and we'll be left with x minus 5. So if we look here, our LCD, when we look at our denominators, it's just x times x minus 5. So we would take that and multiply it by this whole equation. Now, before we multiply everything, if you look at our denominators, what would make our denominator 0? We know is 5 and also 0. Because we know if we put in 5 for x, that'll make this denominator 0. And if we put in 0 for x, that would make this denominator 0 as well. So we know that our final answer cannot be, and I'll put a not equal sign, cannot be 0 or 5. So if we get 0 or 5 for our final answer, we know we cannot use it. So let's go through here. So we have x times the parenthesis x minus 5 times 1, which will give us, it'll give us x squared minus 5x. Now that took care of the 1. Now we would take this value and multiply it by 4 over x minus 5. The x minus 5 simplify out, and we have x times 4, which is 4x, equals. This x times x minus 5 would simplify out with this x times x minus 5, and that would leave 2. Now we want to combine like terms, so we add x squared. A minus 5x plus 4x will give us minus x equals 2. Now we can subtract 2 on both sides, and we have x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Now, when we factor this out, this will factor out to be x minus 2 and x plus 1, and it's set equal to 0. So we'll do x minus 2 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. We know this will give us x equals 2, and this right here will give us x equals negative 1. Now, these two values here does not equal to those two terms up here that we said that it could not equal to, 0 and 5. So we no longer need that. So now we come down here, and we know that our final answer here is x is equal to negative 1 and also 2. Okay, now we scroll on to the next page. It says solve. Now we have negative 2 over x minus 5, 3 over x plus 5. We have 3 over x minus 5 equals negative 20 all over 25 minus x squared. Now let's do something with this 25 minus x squared. We could factor out a negative 1. So we have negative 2 over x plus 5 plus 3 over x minus 5 is equal to negative 20 all over negative 1 times x squared minus 25. Because factoring out this negative 1 would change the sign of both of these values. Now we know a negative 20 divided by a negative 1 would give us a positive 20. Well, let's look here at our, well, let me write that down. Negative 2 over x plus 5 plus 3 over x minus 5 is equal to a positive 20 over, now x squared minus 25, we know that's x minus 5 and x plus 5, because that's the difference of two squares. Now we find the LCD. The LCD of all of these denominators is just x plus 5, x minus 5. So we're going to multiply everything by the x plus 5, x minus 5. Okay, so if you notice here, these x plus 5s will simplify out. So we had x minus 5 times a negative 2, which will give us a negative 2x plus 10. Now these x minus 5s will simplify out, and we'll take positive 3 times x plus 5, which will be positive 3x plus 15. And that equals the x minus 5 and x plus 5 will simplify out, and that will leave us 20. Now we combine like terms. Negative 2x plus 3x is x. 10 plus 15 is 25, and that equals 20. So we'll subtract 25 on both sides, and x is equal to negative 5. Now let's go back up here. Would negative 5 make any of these denominators equal 0? Yes, it would. It would make this denominator equal 0. So we know that this is not our, that this cannot be our answer. And since this was the only answer we had, it'll be no solution. And that is the final answer for that problem. Now, we come here to B. Now, first of all, let's factor all of these denominators. So we had negative x plus 6 all over. We could factor out a 2, and that would give us x minus 3. Plus x minus 1 over x plus 4 is equal to 2x all over. This will factor out to x plus 4 and x minus 3. Now we look here. Our LCD. We notice we got x minus 3, x plus 4, which we have here, but we also have 2. So our LCD will be 2 times x minus 3, x plus 4. This is our LCD. So we will multiply everything by this value. Now, well, let me see if I could do that. So it'd be 2 times x minus 3 times x plus 4. Now, it looks as though I'm not going to be able to write that whole equation. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to write LCD. And you all know that this is the LCD. And it'll be negative x plus 6 all over 2 times x minus 3 plus x minus 1 over x plus 4. And then equals to 2x over x plus 4 and x minus 3. Now, then we know that's all multiplied by here. So now, our LCD, if you notice here, this x minus 3 and this x minus 3 will simplify out. And this 2 and 2 will simplify out. So we will have x plus 4 times a negative x plus 6. Now that would take care of the first term. Now we come to the second term. These x plus 4s will simplify out. And you'll be left with a positive 2 times x minus 3 times x minus 1 equals. Now this x minus 3 and x plus 4 will simplify with this x plus 4, x minus 3. And we will be left here with 2x times 2, which we know is 4x. So now that takes care of all of our fractions. But look here, this is a lot more of a complex problem than the previous ones we've covered. So now we will have to take these two parentheses and multiply them together. That will give us negative x squared. And then this will give us a positive 2x plus 24. And then now we will have to multiply these two parentheses. And then with these two parentheses, whatever the answer is, we have to double it. So x times x we know is x squared, so that'll be a positive 2x squared. And then we will be left with a negative 4x times 2, which would be a negative 8x. And negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3 times 2 is positive 6. And that gives us 4x. Now, we combine like terms. Negative x squared and 2x squared will give us x squared. 2x minus 8x is a negative 6x. 24 plus 6 is 30. And is equal to 4x. Now we will have to subtract 4x on both sides. So we will have x squared minus 10x plus 30 is equal to 0. Okay, now we need to set up our A, B, and C because this problem is not easily factored. A is 1, B is negative 10, and C is 30. Now we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is negative b, whereas actually x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we substitute in those values. Our b is negative 10, so it's the opposite of negative 10, plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared minus 4, a is 1, and c is 30. And that's all over 2 times 1. So we have x is equal to 10 plus or minus the square root of 100. This is negative 4 times 1, which is a negative 4, times 30, which will give us a minus 120. And that's all over 2. Okay, so now we will have 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 20 all over 2.